Robert Daly is director of the Kissinger Institute on China and the United States here at the Wilson Center, and he joins us to discuss the president's upcoming trip to the Pacific, to Asia. East Asia is where he begins his trip.
China, and then he'll go on to Burma.
Yeah, and so how far, this notion of the rebalance, how far down the tracks are we toward that goal?
Well, we had actually a big conference on that at the Wilson Center here this morning, and so I encourage listeners to go online and take a look at that.
Yes,
we went into a lot of detail.
WilsonCenter.org.
So far, we haven't moved very far. We announced it back with an article that Hillary Clinton wrote in Foreign Policy magazine back in 2010. But since then, we have been distracted by Egypt, by Libya, by the Ukraine, by Syria, by ISIL, fill in the blank.
The world has other ideas.
The world has other ideas for us, and we have global interests. And so it's been very tough to follow through on those words. They didn't quite comprise a strategy, but they at least comprised an approach that I think was essentially correct in terms of where our interests now lie. But having announced it, we should have had a plan, a program for following through. And many of our allies and friends in Asia, despite their support for the rebalance, haven't seen that program yet.
Life is what happens when you're planning for something else, I think John Lennon wrote in a song. The significance then of this trip, does this just jumpstart the effort?
Well, it's not so much that it jumpstarts the rebalance per se, is that it is a chance to change the atmospherics in U.S.-China relations. This will be the most high-profile meeting between President Obama and Communist Party General Secretary Xi since they met at Sunnylands in the summer of 2013. And that was a meeting that was supposed to give the impression that they had rolled up their sleeves. It was the shirt sleeve summit, that they were going to dispense with the talking points and the bureaucratic nonsense, get to know each other and get down to brass tacks. Mm-hmm. I think that was a worthwhile effort, but there's no evidence that that really happened. And in fact, since that meeting, when they said that we would try to build together a new model of great power relations, relations between Washington and Beijing have deteriorated. And so we now have a situation that many analysts feel is the worst in U.S.-China relations since 1989 or possibly 79. This is a chance for the two of them to get together and to perhaps halt the slide, probably not reverse it, but to at least change the atmospherics, to get past this commitment to the idea that all the problems in the relationship are the other guy's fault. There's an opportunity here if they capitalize on it.
Are there specific issues or items on the agenda, or will it be this big picture discussion that you describe?
Everything that we can tell from sort of soundings in the media and press releases is that both sides want to accentuate the positive, that they will be talking about opportunities to cooperate in fighting Ebola, for example, possibly anti-terrorist efforts. There will be some talk about working together against ISIL, possibly some talk about cyber relations, but we're still a long way from cooperation. We just had another American report on another major long-term Chinese effort to hack all kinds of American institutions. And if cyber is on the agenda, they probably won't be talking too much about cooperation. Still, the theme seems to be cooperate where we can, manage differences. The challenge is to make sure that that attempt to change the atmosphere is not actually an attempt to paper over the very real difficulties, the true dilemma that has brought us sort of forehead to forehead there in the Western Pacific.
I want to ask you about expectations, both in the U.S. and in China. Do you think that there are many expectations in either country for this coming together of the heads of state?
In the United States, I would say that the expectations are fairly low. I don't have a sense of whether most Americans are paying attention to it at all. I live in this Washington China watching bubble where, of course, this is what we talk about. But most of Americans, I think, don't know what APEC is. This is part of the APEC Leaders Summit. And so Americans will probably not be paying attention. I think there is a chance for Xi and Obama to give a real impetus to negotiations on a bilateral investment treaty. That may be the best outcome that we could hope for, is that they would push for that and then also mobilize both sides to really conclude a mutually beneficial bilateral investment treaty. So expectations are low. On the Chinese side, I think that expectations are high, not so much for U.S.-China relations, but they're high for Xi Jinping, who continues to be extremely popular, who continues to amass ever more power to himself while building a style of popularity in China that we haven't really seen since Mao Zedong. There's a combination of adulation and I think genuine affection and support for Xi Jinping.
So for him, this is essentially a major photo op?
I think a lot of it is a photo op. He has traveled extensively since he came to power in China. and I think has been fairly effective as a diplomat in his travels. But this is his first chance before the Chinese people, the Communist Party and the people, to be seen as the leader of a major, now great power that is receiving visitors from abroad. And that will, I think, help to make him more powerful still. And he'll, of those leaders, the most interesting, I think, to watch is going to be Shinzo Abe of Japan. There's a question of whether Abe and Xi, who have not met since they took over the leadership of their two countries, will actually get together.
One quick final thought, Robert. The various relationships that any world leader has, in the case of President Obama, where does the relationship with Xi rank as far as all of his other relationships? How good a relationship or bad a relationship does he have?
He's not renowned, President Obama, for having close personal relations
Right,
with other leaders generally. And he certainly doesn't with Xi. It's hard to see how he could. There's no animus that I know of, but the cultures, the languages, the styles are so very different. President Obama, if you look at his body language at Sunnylands, seemed to get increasingly disenchanted. Again, we're not talking about an inimical relationship, but they're very different people. The language barrier is really insurmountable, even with a good interpreter, and their two nations do face different interests, different interpretations of what they should be doing in the Western Pacific. So I would say it's not a particularly good relationship, nor is it a notably bad one.
Well, thanks again. And if nothing major happens, we'll see you again next month.
Okay, good. See you soon. Thank you.
Robert. Take care.